In April of 2009, the first episode of River Monsters aired. The episode was titled Piranha and had a fairly famous experiment where the host, Jeremy Wade, got a small pool that was filled with 100 red-bellied piranhas, ones that hadn't been fed in days. First, he poured some blood into the water. Then, he dangled a piece of steak, which the piranhas quickly devoured. And then, Jeremy himself sat in the water with the hungry fish, and nothing really happened. There was no issue, and the piranhas didn't even really seem all that interested in him. In the episode, it seems like he was in the pool for about 5 minutes, though in a behind-the-scenes interview, he said it was actually closer to about 30 minutes. I've also seen similar experiments online where people with pet piranhas put their hands into aquariums, and the piranhas don't attack. However, if we return to the episode of River Monsters, the idea behind the experiment was linked to an investigation. In the episode, Jeremy investigated a case from the 1970s where a bus crashed into a river and people were apparently attacked and eaten by piranhas. And the question arises that, in certain conditions, would piranhas attack people? Over the years, I certainly have heard and read a variety of accounts of people being bitten, and while they generally don't attack humans, there certainly are cases with some minor injuries. But if that's the case, in some exceptional cases, could piranhas have actually caused more than just minor injuries? Well, there are a few notable cases that we are going to look at today. Piranhas inhabit freshwater regions across South America. Though the exact number of species is uncertain, estimates typically range between 30 and 60, with a few notable species receiving the most media attention. There is, of course, some variation in size, with some of the larger species like the San Francisco piranha, Pygocentris pariah, found in the San Francisco River Basin in Brazil, reportedly getting up to 50 centimeters or 19.7 inches, although Fishbase puts their max length at 38 centimeters and max weight at 3.2 kilos, so about 15 inches and 7 pounds. There is also the black piranha or red-eye piranha, Cerosalmus rhombeus, found in a variety of northern areas of South America around the Amazon and Orinoco River basins. On Fishbase, it puts their max length at 41.5 centimeters and max weight at 3.8 kilos, so about 16.3 inches and 8.3 pounds. Though, in another episode of River Monsters, Jeremy Wade caught one that was apparently measured at 17 inches, 43 centimeters. Also, since this comes up a bit, piranhas are generally known for having a pretty strong bite force, but in particular, the black piranha has incredibly powerful jaws, especially relative to its size. According to a 2021 paper titled Bite Force Mechanics and Allometry of Piranha Cerosalmidae, it states that Cerosalmus rhombeus, commonly known as the black piranha, have been shown to have the most powerful bite force relative to its size, with a maximum recorded bite of 320 newtons for a 1.1 kg specimen, which, if we look at the graphs on physics.org, you can see that, again, relative to its size, it has a stronger bite force than some larger fish, including some pretty big sharks. Then there is possibly the most famous species, the red-bellied piranha, or sometimes just the red piranha, Pygocentris nadariri. They generally seem to be a decent bit smaller than the other piranhas. When you see videos of them being caught, they don't seem to get anywhere near as big. But if we look at the maximum size recorded, it seems like they can on occasion get very large. Fishbase gives them a max length of 50 centimeters and a max weight of 3.9 kilos. So 19.7 inches and 8.6 pounds. Again, usually you don't see ones that big, and perhaps there are red eyes and San Francisco piranhas that are larger but just haven't been measured yet. Now, different piranha species can have varying diets. It would seem piranhas are generally considered omnivores, though that depends on the source. Sometimes they consider them to be more carnivorous. But their diets do include both animals and plant matter. According to Britannica, while piranhas have a reputation for being ferocious predators, most species are scavengers or feed on plant material. The New England Aquarium notes that even red-bellied piranhas feed opportunistically on fish, aquatic invertebrates, crustaceans, insects, algae, and aquatic plants. Again, it probably depends on the species, with some leaning more towards plant-based diets diets, and others relying more on meat. There are also Pacu fish, which aren't piranhas, but they are closely related to them, both in the Serisalmidae family. Apparently, they are sometimes referred to as vegetarian piranhas. While they seem to have preference for plant matter like fruit and nuts, it's probably still more accurate to say they are omnivorous, though some are actually considered to be mostly herbivorous, such as the recently discovered Myloplus Sauron, named as such because it has the markings kind of like the Eye of Sauron. But piranhas are more known for eating meat. And returning to the question, does that include humans? If we go back to 2003, there was a study titled Piranha Attacks on Humans in Southeast Brazil. This study was carried out in the town of Santa Cruz of Conceição in São Paulo state, Southeast Brazil. Specifically, a dammed section of the river where locals and tourists would go to bathe and swim on the weekends. The study took place in late March to April of 2002, and this was because for the last 4 years there had been piranha attacks recorded in the area. The offending fish wasn't actually one of the piranhas already mentioned, but the speckled or dark-banded piranha, Serisalmus maculatus. Or at least that was the only species recorded at the study site, so they were confident these were the piranhas attacking people. So they looked at attacks that happened over 5 consecutive Sundays and found 38 instances of piranhas biting people. Interestingly, all the people bitten were, quote, bathing or swimming near the shoreline in shallow and clear waters, and most bites were either on the leg or foot. As more people were bitten over time, local authorities put up signs warning people of the piranhas, and at one point they even set up a small ambulatory care station close to where people were swimming. Most of the attacks seemed to occur in the early afternoon, though this could be due to the fact that that was just when most people were in the water. Now, what was going on here? If piranhas don't usually attack people, why did these ones have such a big problem? Well, if we look a little deeper, it might reveal some clues. In every case of an attack, the person seemed to be bitten once and only once. Most bites didn't require significant medical attention, though some were a bit more serious, with some losing a toe. It didn't really seem like the fish were trying to feast, so why did they bite? Well, it seems like, in this case, it may have been more defensive. The warm season coincides with their spawning season, and the egg clutch is usually placed on floating vegetation or near a cleared spot in shallowed water. And the parent or parents, because sometimes one, sometimes both, will try to guard them. And to quote the paper, guarding behavior of the speckled piranha includes biting attacks against larger animals. They also said that lack of food as a possible cause for piranha bites to humans is highly unlikely because dammed river portions in southeast Brazil, which is where this was, provide plenty of prey fish for these predators, and that, quote, bites to humans by the speckled piranha would occur during the fish breeding season, mostly at shallow dammed sites and at a time when large numbers of people are in the water. We'll move on to another study, but before there is something I should clarify. It's not really as simple as do piranhas eat humans, as in a variety of cases, it is ambiguous as to whether or not people drowned in the water and then were scavenged by piranhas. In the case of the River Monster episode, Jeremy Wade investigated a case in the 70s where a bus entered the river, and it was said that most people were eaten by piranhas. By the way, the episode is on YouTube on the official River Monsters YouTube account, so you can watch it there if you want. But Jeremy Wade interviewed a survivor who managed to escape the bus and swim to the surface, and he, as in the survivor, didn't recall seeing any piranhas. Now, when the bodies were pulled from the water, they had injuries that clearly showed piranhas had been at them. But since it was hours later, it's difficult to say as to whether or not they were attacked while alive or they had drowned before the piranhas started scavenging. Which, I guess, to be clear, is more of the question I'm trying to ask. Have they ever eaten people alive? Quote a line from the introduction of the 2003 paper, "There is a misunderstanding about actual attacks on live humans and scavenging by piranhas and humans already dead due to other cases, such as heart failure and drowning." Anyway, let's continue on. I want to briefly look at another study, this time from Suriname in 2006. There is some overlap, so I might go through it a bit faster, but they looked at 3 different sites where there had been piranha attacks on bathers, mostly around small villages next to the Wayombo River. with many victims being children. The attacks seem to span over a longer timeline though, or at least the recorded attacks. One village had 30 attacks, but over the space of 12 years, with mostly minor injuries to the feet. The second village, however, had some more serious attacks, over a space of 7 years. Some people lost fingers, and others had deep wounds on their legs, arms, and torso. And 2 victims were attacked by multiple piranhas at once. In a third location that was part of a recreational park near Suriname River, there were also attacks, but they weren't as bad, usually a single bite. Thankfully, no one died. In terms of species involved, they found some human flesh in some Cerassalmus rhombeus, or red-eyed or black piranha, confirming, or at least heavily implying, that this was the species that was mainly involved in the attacks. While these are certainly good papers to look at, they don't seem to show any fatalities, but unfortunately, the next few cases do. Next isn't a study, but a news report that came from Bolivia in 2011. The incident occurred in the northeast of the country. According to news reports, an 18-year-old who was drunk jumped out of a canoe in Rosario del Llata, 400 miles north of the capital, La Paz. He was later found by police, and it seemed that he had bled out from piranha bites. There was also some confusion, as they thought this man was a fisherman. Surely he would have known about the piranhas in the region. There aren't too many details on this one. There are a couple of news sources, and apparently the local radio in the area reported it with an interview with a police officer. They don't say the species, though considering the area, it may have been red-bellied or black piranha, but that is just speculation. I'm a bit confused by the events. Is it possible he fell rather than jumped into the river, considering that they keep mentioning that he was intoxicated? And are they sure he was conscious when he was attacked? I don't really know. As you'll see, many reports are a little ambiguous. Let's move forward in time, again to Brazil in 2021, where someone had a very bad day. This incident occurred in Brazil Unjas de Minas, in southern Brazil, where 3 men decided to go fishing one Sunday. However, the men were attacked by bees, and trying to escape from the bees, they decided to jump into the lake and swim away to safety. Well, guess what was in the lake? 2 men were able to swim safely away, but the third man had disappeared. In the commotion, they had lost their friend. Later, authorities managed to find the man's body and pull it from the lake. It was about 4 meters or 13 feet from the shore, and sure enough, he had injuries caused by piranha bites. But the question is, did he drown and then the piranhas came for him, or did the piranhas take him out? Would they have gone for this one guy in particular, and would they be able to kill a 30-year-old man? Again, the thing is, since piranhas are known scavengers, if someone does drown in an area where they are, they likely will scavenge the body, and then there's a good chance that it will look like they were the cause of death. The other thing is, authorities said that according to reports, quote, the man was found in a certain position that is commonly seen in drowning. So perhaps we need to try and look for attacks that are considered more of a feeding frenzy. And for that, we can also look to Brazil. Certain piranhas will sometimes travel in large groups and display shoaling behavior. Now, according to a study in 2005, published in the Royal Society, the main benefit of this, for red-bellied piranhas anyway, is that it provides defense from other predators like caimans and river dolphins. However, when conditions are right, they certainly can go into a feeding frenzy. When they do, they don't just use their sight, but also deep sounds to communicate. In fact, according to an article in The Guardian, microphones lowered into a tank of aggressive red-bellied piranhas picked up an impressive repertoire of barks, croaks, and drumbeat sounds, each of which is thought to convey a different message. The infamy around feeding frenzies may have been what gave piranhas their deadly reputation in the first place, and some attribute this all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt's book, Through the Brazilian Wilderness, where he describes them as, quote, the most formidable genre of fish in the world. The piranha, or cannibal fish, the fish that eats men when it gets the chance. And by the way, he writes that the reason it's called cannibal fish isn't because it eats other piranha, but because it eats humans, which I know that's not what cannibal means, but for some reason it's used that way sometimes. I've seen it used for other man-eaters as well. I don't know. I know it doesn't mean that. That's just what they had said for some reason. Anyway, back to Brazil in 2023. At a resort, a group of 8 tourists found themselves under attack by a, quote, swarm of piranhas while swimming in the Chiete River. The fish left them with bloody bites on their legs and feet, forcing them to get out of the water. Sounds familiar, but according to the article written on Live Science, this area was a feeding spot. And not only that, but it sounds like this area was known for having people actually feeding the piranhas, which would probably increase the chances of them grouping up and going into frenzies. As one ichthyologist stated, feeding piranhas in a tourist setting strengthens their natural behaviors to score and bite. What may have started as misidentification may have triggered what sounds like the start of a feeding frenzy. Though, considering some similarities to previous attacks, it's hard to say if it was really a feeding frenzy. On one hand, 8 people were attacked around the same time rather quickly in an area that may be known for piranha feeding, may have gotten accustomed to getting food when humans are in the water. But on the other hand, it does sound similar to the other accounts where piranhas were just trying to be defensive. So I'm not exactly sure. There are other reports and stories, some news reports from 2024 and 2023 involving men who may have been killed by piranhas, but again, in both cases, it could have been that they drowned and then were scavenged. But now we're going to look at some cases that seem less ambiguous, where piranhas really were the cause of death. The next incident took place during a thunderstorm, and this happened in Monte Alegre in Brazil in 2015. A 6-year-old girl was on a holiday with her grandmother and 4 other children, and they went out onto the water on a boat. The weather turned bad, and at some point the boat overturned. And while they scrambled to get to the shore, and the grandmother managed to get 4 children out of the water, she wasn't able to get to the 6-year-old girl in time. And when she did get to her, she saw, quote, a pool of blood and a shoal of piranha fish. The girl was brought to the shore and then the hospital, but accounts say she died at the scene. And then a new layer of all of this comes to light, that perhaps smaller humans, like children, are in more danger from piranhas. There is a moment in the River Monsters episode where Jeremy Wade interviews a family living on a house over a river that has many red-bellied piranhas, and they describe to him a similar incident where a child fell into the water, and by the time the family could pull them out, it was too late. And though this account is a lot older since we mentioned it, if we return to Teddy Roosevelt's book, he also writes that, quote, only 3 weeks previously, a 12-year-old boy who'd gone in swimming near Corumba was attacked and literally devoured alive by them. The them being piranhas. The other thing is that while children may be more at risk, when you think about it, if adults can be injured, given the wide range of piranhas and the different species and all the different people throughout the countries entering the water at different times, you'd imagine at some point something like this could have also happened to an adult, even if it is incredibly rare. Piranhas typically don't attack people, and when they do, the bites are usually not fatal. However, under certain conditions, such as low water levels, high temperatures, and food scarcity, and in areas where they have many people entering the water, the risk of aggression increases. There's also defensive behavior, though that seems to only result in minor injuries. While many reported fatalities could be cases of scavenging on drowned victims, there is evidence suggesting that in some instances, especially for some younger people, piranhas may have actively preyed upon living people and caused them to die. And then there's also a blurred line where perhaps people were injured or unconscious as they entered the water, and a piranha attack then could probably be more lethal. Though piranha attacks remain rare, these factors do suggest that under certain circumstances, they can indeed be somewhat dangerous. Though, like with most animals, it seems like the media have exaggerated to a large extent, with things like the 1978 film Piranha and its sequels, and many point the finger at Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, I used his quotes, and he certainly seems very wary of them and writes many warnings of them, some of which I think might be a little bit exaggerated. But I would like to add that he also did write, quote, ordinarily, it appears an unwounded man is attacked only by accident. Such accidents are rare, but they happen with sufficient frequency to justify much caution in entering water where piranhas abound. Which, to be fair, isn't that bad of a quote. Anyway, thank you to my wonderful members and patrons, and thank you for watching.